Okay, you should have all of your parts, assembly, and exploded view complete before you begin your drawings. So I'm going to show you today how to create that drawing. First, we're going to go up to File, New. Make sure you're under English. You don't want to be in the metric system or mold design. Make sure you're in English. We've used standard inch part files. We've used standard inch assembly files. And we're going to use the ANSI inch drawing file right here. So I can double click on that, or I can click it once and the create button down here at the bottom. Once it opens up, it's going to default to D-size paper. We don't want to use D-size paper because that would be really large. If you go over here to sheet 1, we can right click on sheet 1, scroll down here to edit sheet, and we can change the size of the sheet right here. Currently you can see it's D size. You can click the drop down and change it to A pretty easily. If we wanted to, we could make it portrait instead of landscape. We could change where the title block is, but we're not going to do any of that. We just want to change the size to A. Hit OK, and the sheet should change a little bit. Now our title block looks a lot bigger because in proportion it is. So we need to make this smaller. If you go over here back to the left, our user interface browser here, we want to right click on ANSI large and delete. Let's say for whatever reason you accidentally click the little X here in the corner and you lose this box. To get it back, you simply go up to the top where it says view, click on user interface, and make sure the browser is checked, and that should come back. Now we just got rid of our title block a little bit ago, so we want to bring back a smaller version of the same thing. In our browser, we can go to Drawing Resources, hit the little arrow next to Drawing Resources to expand this. Here you have title blocks, hit the little arrow, and it will open up. You've got ANSI large, and you have ANSI A. We did have large. We don't want that because we're using A size paper. We can double click on A or right click and insert. And there we have our smaller title block. Now we put our browser on here, so currently our menu buttons at the top here under view. We want to go back to place views. This is where we're going to place our parts. If we need to make any extra projected or auxiliary views, we can do that using these two. But for the most part, we're going to use base view with this beginning level stuff. Now at this point, I would recommend saving so that you have the document currently set up the way that it should be, in the right size, the right title block, etc., etc. So I'm going to go up to File, Save As, and for you guys are going to go down to the student data drive, find the Kurzweil folder, go to ADA, and whichever period you're in, make sure that you go into that period, find your name, and save your file. Okay. First we're going to put, we would want to put our assembly and exploded view on here, but I'm going to show you that later. For now, let's just do the legs. Now our legs aren't actually going to be on sheet 1, which is where we are right now. They're going to be on sheet 2, and what we're going to do is end up having about 15 sheets for all of our parts. So if you're in place views, over here to the right there's a new sheet button. I'm going to click that a few times, and if you notice over here on the left, I now have a whole bunch of sheets. Now it may be hard to see, but the one that is highlighted in white is the one that I'm currently viewing. So right now I'm looking at sheet 10. I don't want to put my parts on sheet 10. I want to go up here to sheet number 2. So if I click slowly, it's going to want us to give that a new name. I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to click off of it and double click quickly. And now I am in sheet 2. I'm looking at sheet number 2. So we're going to go up to base. We are going to look for our first part. Now for you, you're going to go under student data, Kurzweil, ADA, and find your name. under your period, but mine aren't there. Mine are in a different place. So I'm going to do the desk for this one. I'm going to use my Part A leg for desk, and I'm going to open that up. Now you'll see it pop up here to the right. You should have a front view. So normally our front view is the longest view and shows us the most detail. In this particular case, it's our tallest view, not necessarily our longest, but it does still show us the most detail. And we orient it this way because it's the way that it's going to be on the table. Now, for whatever reason, your table leg looks like this, and it's sideways. You can fix it by using this little cube. So you can turn it left and right using these two arrows, or you can rotate it by clicking on different parts of the cube itself. So if I rotate it back to the way it should be, I can actually click the corner, make this into an isometric leg. I can rotate it around so that you saw the one mortise there disappeared. But what we want should be the front view. Yours may not say front, yours might say right or top, but we want it to look like my front view. Right there, our front view. Once you have it oriented the correct way, now you want to bring your mouse over here to the right. That's going to be where our right view is. It doesn't really matter where it is right now. You can just click anywhere as long as it's making a rectangle. So I click, that's a left click. I'm going to go up here directly above it. If I'm just slightly to the side, it's going to turn into a rectangle. I want it to be directly above my front view. So I'm just going to left click again. There's my top view. Now if I go up here to the corner, this will give me my isometric. Again, it doesn't matter if it's off the page right now. We're going to move that later. So I'm going to left click again. And then finally at the end, once I have placed all my views, I can right click over here in the white space and I want to hit OK. That's going to generate my views for me. Now I can grab the little red box around the different views and relocate them. Now you may notice that the front view kind of moves the top and right side view with it. So if you're grabbing the right side view, trying to move it up and down, it's not going to let you do that. If you grab the top and try to move it left and right, it's not going to let you do that. You have to use the front view to do some of those movements, okay? Because they have to stay lined up with each other. Now for isometric, we want to shade this and we want to put a label beneath it. So we're going to double click on the red box, click the shaded option, and that will make it shaded. And then down here we want to turn on this little light bulb, and what that does is it makes our label show up and our scale show up. So we want our scale to be, I believe it's 1/6, will fit nicely on the paper. And we want our view to be Part A leg. So we can just type that in there. And that should be good. If you accidentally click the wrong buttons here, it's okay. We can always come back in and change it. So we hit OK, and there's our leg. Now it's a little bit off the page, so I just grab the red box and I pull it down. Now let's say we've got some other stuff here and it's kind of running into our label. You can grab the label by itself and move it if you want to. And then when you grab the leg, the label will move with it, which is pretty nice. Back to our orthographic, our front, top, and right side views. We can do the same thing by double clicking on the box around the front view. It will open up our window again with our options. And we don't need a label on this one. Sometimes you do, but in our case you don't need to do that. But what I do want to do is change the scale so that it matches the isometric if it will fit on the page. So we're just going to try to type in 1-6 or backslash, hit OK, and there it is. You may want your hidden lines on, you might not. I'm going to leave mine on there just for clarity. I would prefer that you have them on. If you don't, it's not the end of the world. And here we have all our views placed. That's probably the hardest part of this. Next thing we're going to do is use the annotate tool or window to use our dimensioning items to put dimensions onto our leg. Now, one thing that a lot of people run into right away is they click on the side of the leg here and they dimension it, and this is supposed to be 32 inches. But if you look here, it's 31.88. Reason being, we put a chamfer on the bottom of this leg, so it's not including that little bit of space. So we got to make sure, if we're measuring the entire length of the leg, because this is a little misleading, that we click the very top and we click the very bottom. So it's nice to be able to zoom in and out to see that. So I'm just going to delete this dimension. To do that, I got to hit escape to turn off my dimension tool. So I hit escape a few times, and now I can click on here and hit the delete key, not backspace, delete. So dimension, I'm going to zoom in, make sure I have the top line, zoom out, zoom back in at the bottom, and make sure that I click the very bottom line. And now I have my 32 that I want. And I hit OK. That's not the only dimension that we need. We need a bunch of others. What I don't want you to do is put 32 over here, 32 over here, 32 over here. We don't need all those dimensions telling us the same information over and over again. What I do need to know is what the space is between the top of the mortise and the top of the leg, the top of the mortise and the bottom of the mortise, from the side of the mortise to the side of the leg, and also how wide the mortise is. So I can dimension all those things. So I'm going to go ahead and dimension the width of the mortise. That's 0.5. I'm going to dimension from the side of the leg to the mortise. That's also 0.5. I'm going to stagger these a little bit just so that you can see they're two different measurements. I'm going to use the dimension tool again, go from the top of the leg to the top of the mortise. That should be 0.25. And then the length of the mortise. That should be 0.35. If you can get your dimensions to line up nicely like this, that's great. But if it's going to add confusion or the arrows are over top of the numbers, you want to stagger them like I did here at the top. Less is always best, as long as you have all the information required. Now we're going to go down here to the bottom and we're going to dimension this bottom mortise. So from the bottom of the mortise to the very bottom of the leg, make sure you grab the very bottom. That should be 6. And then from the bottom of the mortise to the top of the mortise should be 1.25. Now if this happens, we can move that number. First we have to turn off the dimension tool. So if I hit escape, I can grab the number and just drag it up top. That way they're not running into each other. It makes it a lot cleaner. I do not need to measure or dimension from here to here. That's 0.5. I don't need to do that because it's already up here at the top of the page. So there's no sense in putting it on there twice. I don't need to put all these dimensions on my right side view. I can assume that it's all the same if it's not labeled. For the top view, it might be helpful to label this as 1.5 and 1.5. You really shouldn't need to because we can assume that that's 0.5, 0.5, and there's 0.5 left over. And we can assume that this is a square, so if it's 0.5 here, it should also be 0.5 here. But we're going to dimension it just in case. There's one. There's the other. Those should be all of the dimensions required for that piece. Actually, no, there's one more. The depth of the mortise itself should be 0.5. So I'm going to add that one in here as well. And just like before, I'm going to hit escape and I want to put this number on the other side. It's not the clearest dimension, but it's there. The last thing you need to do on the parts is add a title and the school down here at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and use a text box. I'm just going to click once, and that's going to give me a title block to draw in. So you can just put the name